I need to know that she's gonna have a decent life, where she cares about people, and that she's gonna be okay. I need to know that I have done one thing right with my life.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel and I'm joined once again by the Oscar frontrunner himself, Sam Meltzer. And today we're here to talk about the possible frontrunner of the Best Actor race, Brendan Fraser in Darren Aronofsky's film The Whale. Released somewhat recently, it's been piddling around the awards circuit, and we're here to discuss our thoughts on it and let you know if it's worth seeing, because this film has become a little more contentious as it's been released to the world. But if you want to talk to us about The Whale, whether you agree or disagree, you can join our Discord. That link is at the top of the description, and while you're down there, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you know when we're doing more of these reviews, and leave a comment. Let me know your favorite movie. Why not? You know, just a simple, clear topic. Start some discussion. But Sam, thank you for joining me. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on The Whale, because you saw this kind of a while ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw it at a film festival back in mid-October. So a lot has happened between then and now,
Yes.
with the reception that the film has had, the awards possibilities that the film is garnering. So it's kind of been a long time. It's felt kind of like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I still remember it very distinctly.
Yeah. And you really enjoyed it. So where do you want to start this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to get this out of the way that I understand why people strongly dislike this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it is a very flawed film in many ways, but I think ultimately I was sort of enamored by how emotional I was. And sometimes I am a fish and I fall for the Oscar bait.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if a movie is really emotionally compelling to me, I will fall for it, even if I think it's sentimental or like overly sentimental or obnoxious occasionally. And The Whale is kind of one of those movies. So yeah, I'm really mostly positive on this one.
I definitely am as well. I was really blown away by not only how much I liked it, but how much it pulled me in with its sentimentality, as you said. But for me, it feels like really genuine sentimentality. There's a few elements here or there that we'll discuss about with a couple of performances that I'm like, this is a little over the top. It's pushing it into a zone that I wish could have been pulled back a little bit. But with the genuine nature of these characters, their dynamics and the writing that had phenomenal dialogue, the great performances across the board, I was really surprised by how quality all the performances were. Like, there's no one that sticks out in terms of like delivering a lesser performance than everyone else. And the story and the characters and the environment that we're set in feels so intimate and personal that I think it fits that genuine sentimental mood. Everything comes together to deliver a film ostensibly like no other. There's been plenty of one-room films, plenty of dramas that take place in one location with the cast coming in and out, but the centering this film around Charlie, who is sedentary in his house, and he has to have other people come in and out to have anyone to interact with him, grounds it in a way that feels very personal to his story. And the way that evolves over the course of the film as each character comes in and out and we learn more about them and more about Charlie himself, kept it really engaging across the entire runtime, even though it's like, yeah, this is so simple and so pared back, but I really found a lot to enjoy through that simplicity.
I did too. I think that when you have a character who's mostly immobile, and it's a chamber piece, a theatrical piece, it's really hard to stay engaged the entire time. I think a lot of recent films based on plays suffer from the fact that you feel uncomfortably trapped in one room and you're kind of stuck there. You never go outside. There's not even many establishing shots. Maybe this is me thinking about a lot of the films I had to watch when binging Oscar nominees from the 60s and 70s, because that period of time has so many films based on plays. It was such a trend that movies like that would be a part of the conversation.
It's a lot rarer now. A lot rarer.
Yeah, I mean, a lot rarer now.
Maybe count on two hands in like the last decade what big single-run films there are.
And ultimately, most of them don't work for me.
Yeah.
I didn't really like One Night in Miami.
Yeah, I thought it was
one
fine.
that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It's not a very dynamic film at all. And I'll get into the flaws I have with this aspect later,
Yeah.
but a way that I appreciated them making this film more cinematic was because, as I said, you have an immobile character, you have one apartment. Was the camera work and sort of how Aronofsky played with the thriller aspects and the movement around Charlie. I do have issues with that we can get into later or now if you want.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the genuine attempt at making the film feel less theatrical.
Yeah, I think that the reason why the one room nature of this film feels a lot more realistic to me and not like super constraining in terms of, wow, I wish we were in other places, is because this film is one of the main films that I can think of where it's through a character's eyes. Like, you are experiencing the world alongside Charlie. You're not cutting out to whatever his daughter is doing across the town, or you're not cutting out to his friend Liz, like, at work or something like that. This is through his point of view, and you only see the world as he sees it, and you're just seeing it through this section of his life. There was a point in his life where he was out and about, and we could have gotten, you know, there are scant flashbacks to a beach, at least in this movie, but we could have gotten that stuff. But I think focusing on the moment keeps me, at least as a viewer, a lot more engaged with Charlie's mindset, because Brendan Fraser as Charlie something, I don't really know his last name, Charlie Whale, he gives, frankly, one of the most compelling performances I've ever seen. I was one of the people that, since I saw Elvis early in this year, I'm like, yeah, I really want Austin Butler to be up there in that conversation. And I was always like, oh no, but you better watch out for Brendan Fraser in The Whale. He's gotten that standing ovation, and, you know, he's giving a performance with a lot of makeup and stuff. And I was underestimating how much I would love this performance. And for me, he's the clear number one, at least from my personal ranking of who I want to win. This is one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen because of that sedentary nature and how much emoting he has to do without physical motion. He's not moving his hands around or like bending over the table and crying like other people do in other movies. It's about the subtle movements of his body and the motion of his eyes that is so perfectly synced to the makeup of the extra pounds this character has to put on, or, you know, Brendan Fraser has to have over him to appear as Charlie. Like, with the neck and the back of the head, it's like, I don't even know how, I don't know how they did it. It's one of the most impressive makeup moments I've ever seen in a film, and that it only complements his performance, which is so nuanced in the joy he feels and the pain he's feeling through. He's dying in this film, and he's sad about quite a few things, and he's reliving memories of the past that are unearthing like deep traumas, and that is all shown through like the physical or like the facial emotion that Brendan Fraser gives. It blew me away. It really did.
Yeah, I think he does a really, really good job at playing a character in which everything in his life is downhill.
Yeah.
I mean, the backstory, just for small spoilers here, is that Liz, played by Hong Chow, who's a nurse and his only real friend, who takes care of him. You know, we learn in one of the opening scenes that it's basically the last couple of days he has left to live. He really doesn't have much time left. He has, you know, problems with obesity and various other physical health issues that he's struggling with. And basically, we learned that Liz's brother and him were lovers, and he and Liz's brother killed himself, and that caused Charlie to be put in this state of depression and gain all this weight and just live in misery. But what I appreciated most about his performance was that the character was such an optimist.
Yeah,
and how
absolutely.
He's literally at the last moment of his life. There was nothing seemingly positive happening, but he still manages to find that joy. And that whole aspect of being an English teacher is always compelling to me. I don't know why I always am compelled by teachers in film. Like, you could look at something like In the Bedroom, which is a Todd Field movie, and Sissy Spacek's character in that is kind of, you could perceive her as cold or unlikable, but the fact that she was a music teacher really, I found that really compelling. Well, very different, but sure. But yeah, no, I think ultimately that's what drew me so much to Charlie. And as you said, yeah, the eyes were really the most impressive part of the performance for me, because he has big eyes and they really show so much emotion. Because that always impresses me more. Like I don't care often about what you're talking, what the words that are coming out of your mouth. If you're facially impressive, I'm going to be impressed by your performance. And he's really good. He gives a very big performance. It's a showy one, but that never really took me out of it, just because I was so emotionally interested in this character
absolutely.
and his journey. Whereas a lot of Oscar bait performances like this, I'm very much out of it. But with this, I wasn't. I felt that it was very genuine, and even if some lines of dialogue you find cheesy or corny or misguided, it obviously comes from a place of people who aren't intending to do anything negative. They want this film to have a positive impact, and I like that state of mind that the filmmakers had.
Yeah, and it's the different elements of Charlie as a person that make him such a compelling main character. Before I saw this movie, I hadn't read the description. I'd seen that one fucking still. The one picture of Brendan Fraser that is currently the poster. It's the only image we had of the goddamn film for the longest time. And basically all I knew about it is it was about a 600-pound guy who's trying to reconnect with his brother or with his daughter. And that's all I knew going into this. I didn't know about the English teacher part. I didn't know about the depression or the past queer relationship that he had or any of those elements. And it was learning about him as a person that kept him so interesting. Yes, he's an overweight guy who's dealing with health problems, but it's also his optimism that's a really interesting part of his personality. It's the way that he ebbs and flows between moods, because he'll be the happiest person in the room and then suddenly something will change and he'll shift to something incredibly sad and traumatic, and it feels so right in the moment. And it's because he's such a compelling character and nuanced from a past perspective, what his current situation is of like being an online teacher. I've never seen that in a movie before. And I really love when a movie can not only give me a character that's in a unique situation. I mean, I'll probably never be in a situation like this. I don't know anyone in a situation like this, but I can connect so deeply to him because we learn so much about every aspect of his life, and that's brought out by the supporting cast, who I certainly want to talk about. I think are phenomenal. Primarily for me, Hong Chow and Ty Simpkins, I think, giving really, really interesting performances that have reveals as it goes along, and they impact Charlie in different ways. And then there's also Sadie Sink, who I think her performance is kind of the outlier for me. I think it's good, but it borders on melodramatic and ridiculous. That's kind of the point of the character. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the supporting cast.
Yeah, Hong Chow to me gives my favorite performance in the entire film. Like, I think I might even like her more than Fraser, because even the problems I have with the script and the camera work at times, she is the least affected by that. And I think the most affected by that is Sadie Sink.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I get that teenagers are annoying and shrill at times, but her character almost felt like it was going too far into that
It was
that
like a
route.
characterization. It was a cartoonishly over-the-top angsty character.
It was a little one note to me. I didn't really buy it. I mean, there were a lot of moments I appreciated, and I understood where her character was coming from in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's probably very, very difficult to be mean to Brendan Fraser. So I have to give her some credit there.
That's the real acting ability.
Exactly. But ultimately, the way the character is written, I had a lot of issues with.
Yeah.
A lot of people were praising Samantha Morton for her one scene. I didn't find it memorable at all.
That was fine.
I think her one scene in She Said is incredible and a far more impressive standout. Ty Simpkins, not really memorable to me. I think he's fine, but I don't really care. But yeah, I mean, Brendan is obviously amazing. I get the narrative for him. It's a huge comeback. It's always nice to see an actor get such a meaty role after years and years of not getting respect and attention and genuine credits to work with. So that was awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think as an ensemble, it's very well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of this relies on the emotion that the characters have and
Yeah.
how they translate from stage to screen. But yeah, Hong Chau, my favorite. I really think she has the most realism. She feels the most grounded. She is the light at the end of the tunnel. Her character, I love her, and she's such a good actress. She's worked with so many good directors. I'm so excited that we're living in Hong Chau era.
We're living in the
because-
Chow-sans.
Yeah, we really are, because she's really kind of getting there.
Yeah. Amazing in
terms
the
of
menu.
being
Go watch the menu.
amazing in the menu. Her tortilla
So
line
funny.
was hilarious, and I heard she's really good in the movie Showing Up, which is
Yeah,
the
I
new
saw the
Kelly
trailer for that.
Reichardt movie
Yeah.
with Michelle Williams. Yeah, I'm very excited for that, and she's working with Yorgos Lanthimos and Wes
Really?
Anderson. Like, she is going to be with everyone.
That's awesome.
So I'm really excited for her, and she was my favorite one here
Yeah.
as well. So I really like her.
I think what's great about the three main supporting characters that we have is they feel pretty balanced in terms of how often they're showing up in the film. It feels like at a certain point I'm like, oh, we haven't seen Ty Simpkins' character in a while. Like, is he just going to be like something at the beginning? And no, he shows up a couple times throughout, and each character has interesting personality traits that relate to themes that the film wants to bring up in their conversations, in the way that they impact Charlie. The religious aspect that Ty Simpkins' character Thomas brings out in the conversations is really interesting. The way that that brings out things in Hong Chau's character Liz, where she's really protective of who is coming into Charlie's life. She doesn't want to see him hurt. She is watching him go down the path that the sort of the opposite but parallel to the path that her brother went down. Her character being the pessimism to Charlie's optimism, but like it's more like realist pessimism. Like she's like, no, you are dying. And he's like, no, you know, I'm fine. Like I'm dying, but it's fine. I don't need to go to the hospital. There's such an interesting interplay there in terms of their friendship, and then his dynamic with his daughter and his ridiculous optimism and her ridiculous pessimism, and the fact that the movie really talks about so many different things in terms of what does hope mean to certain people, what does finding joy in relationship mean to certain people, or does your joy come from your relationships or your religion or the path you're taking in life. And each character has bits and pieces of each of those themes through their personality and their dialogue that they bring out across the course of the film. And because it is based on a play and you can feel that nature, it feels like you're watching a scenario where people are showing up, they're leaving, they're showing up, they're leaving, and it really ebbs and flows in a really natural way, to where I never felt like I got too much or too little of any character. I felt like we got just the right amount of screen time of Charlie by himself, so you can see him work to move around his house and live his life alone, and then how that changes when other people are there, and then the dynamics between just Hong Chau and Ty Simpkins, just Ty Simpkins and Sadie Sink, just Sadie Sink and Hong Chau. Like, there was such a nice balance between that supporting cast that it's so nice. There's basically not extraneous characters. I'm so used to watching a film, a great ensemble film, but having, 2 or 3 characters that take that back seat, and you're like, okay, maybe if they were trimmed out, it could feel a little more consistent. And there's basically no fat to trim on this, except for maybe Samantha Morton's character. But I think the fact that she's only in one scene, you're right, her performance isn't the craziest, but what she brings out in terms of the themes, as I was saying, and the emotions and personality that we learn about Charlie in that moment are all fantastic. So I love how complete this cast feels to me.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very well-paced movie, too.
It really is,
which
yeah.
especially helps with how theatrical it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to touch on the issues I had with the movie.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'm a little conflicted on how I feel about the kind of almost thriller nature that the film has. The first scene of the movie is 1 minute of Charlie's Zoom class.
Yeah.
And it's slowly zooming out, and you see the entire class on the computer. And he is a black screen. His camera is off.
Yeah.
And he talks like he has a issue with his camera. He can't really, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada. And you don't know what he looks like. And when I first watched the movie, I didn't know what he looked like, because all there was that one still of him. It's basically just his face. So I didn't know what he looked like. And I felt like the movie was trying to build up tension there. And then when he was finally revealed, it was like meant to be some kind of shock or something. I'm not sure if I liked the tension that was built up or if I don't. And also, I watched interviews, as I said earlier, I watched interviews talking about how it's hard to have a immobile character and make a film feel cinematic, so I appreciate some of the visual attempts to make the film more cinematic, because it does help with the pacing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there were some visual gags and such that I didn't really like.
Sure.
Like, there's a scene where Charlie goes on a binge eating, like, he goes on an eating binge, and there's, like, intense music, and the camera is, like, circling around and, like, zooming in, and I don't know how I felt about that. And then there was another moment where he opens a drawer, and there's, like, a granola bar or a Kind bar.
Oh, yeah,
frowns,
and then he closes it, and he opens
then
a candy bar drawer. That was a cheesy-ass moment.
I don't know how... Like, moments like that, I'm like, I can tell it's coming from a genuine place, but I was a little uncomfortable during scenes like that. And obviously, like, the movie isn't meant to make you feel comfortable all the time, but I'm not sure how intentional it was in certain moments like that. So in that way, I get why people don't like the movie. I think there's enough here that I get why someone would interpret it, you know, as inauthentic or even fat-phobic. I hate that term, but yes. But in the end, as I said, like, the character development, good plot, good pacing, and good acting are what I care about most in a film, and I think the movie has enough of that for me to really like it. And yeah, Brendan Fraser, Hong Chow are so good. Obviously, we all know this by now. But yeah, I mean, sometimes there were some technical things that I was like, and little visual details I was a little iffy on. But overall, I really did like it, and I like it more than most people, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, and I'm in the exact same boat. I think that those moments, you're right, they stick out from the film, but for me, they really are just moments. I mean, they're at least in my experience, relatively few and far between. Like, the couple that you mentioned, I remember being like, okay, all right, this is, like, much more filmy than the other parts, because it is utilizing music and editing in a way that plays don't have the ability to. And it felt like they were leading into the filmmaking a little more than, which made it feel distinct from the rest of the film, which is, you know, just pretty simple shots. Maybe it's a close-up, maybe it's a medium, maybe it's a two-shot, and you're like, circling around and showing them from every angle, but it's really quiet and simple in terms of the filmmaking. But I found a like richness to the way that the film is edited and paced, and that is combined with the production design of Charlie's apartment, which is lit by just a couple of lamps, and the light streaming in through the always closed blinds and window shades, and the books that he has everywhere, and the things piled on his shelves that give it a really claustrophobic and oppressive feeling, but that is again still through his eyes. I mean, this is the stuff that he has built up over the years. He doesn't go anywhere. Of course he's going to have so many things around him, and it felt so naturalistic. Like, I've been in houses and apartments of people that have a lot of things, and that's what this is like. And I mean, it really is so different from what we see in other films of, you always want light to be shining in, so you're lighting up your actors' faces, and so light can shine on whatever object it is that they're reaching to pick up. But that they reverse that in this film, and it feels so unique because of that. And that is the production design and the camera work and everything that is opposite of the fast editing and grandeur that we see in other films. It really was a breath of fresh air. Well, I guess in some ways a breath of stale air that's been in this one room for 15 years or whatever. Compared to so many other films that I love, but this was just so distinct from those.
Yeah, you mentioned the lighting, and, you know, the second you're in it just, the home and the way it's lit feels so familiar, and I think that really helped me feel like I was there, because as I've said before, it's hard to do that with a theatrical chamber piece, and I don't have an issue with that if it's done like this. I have, most of my favorite chamber pieces are from the 70s. There are couple in there that are really strong, but with this, as you said, like, the lighting I really thought was, for me, the best aspect of it technically.
Sure.
Because there's something about it that you just know. You really know it. It's
because it doesn't feel produced. You're so used to movies feeling like places that are sets that are built out in the world and not places that you would go and visit. But this feels like the lighting being so dim feels like I could close my blinds and recreate that right now, which is something you don't see in many movies because they've got bright frosty lights. They're in an interesting location that I'm never going to end up going to. But this is a place with a realistic feel to it.
Absolutely. I mean, again, like the editing, aside from that binge eating scene, I thought was really well done. And again, editing is pacing. They are interchangeable in a lot of ways, and if I think the pacing's great, then the editing's probably going to be great.
Yeah, I didn't have any problems with length. I saw some people saying like, oh man, almost 2 hours. What is Aronofsky on? But like, what for me? What scene would you cut? Every scene has something important that we're learning about Charlie's personality or past or relationships, or it's him by himself, as I was saying. And so I had no problem with the length. I mean, frankly, I think with an extra 15, 20 minutes, we could have had more development from Sadie Sink's character and see where that relationship ended up if given more time for the two of them to spend together. But also, I don't know how different this is from the play or if there were, creative liberties taken to turn it into a film versus a play. But I like these characters. I like the actors so much. I appreciate the world that we're in so much that I would have taken another 15, 20 minutes of The Whale. And frankly, it still would have been one of the shortest movies in this award season because a lot of these movies are almost 3 hours long. So sub 2 hours is impressive for this award season specifically.
Yeah. I mean, there was a whole article that I read recently talking about how there's just too many movies and too many shows and people feel overwhelmed, and how all of those movies are like 2.5 hours long, and how all of the shows like are 10 episodes per season and each of them are an hour long. So I understand this narrative. So it's nice to see something like The Whale or Women Talking, which is a nice hour 45, a crisp hour 45 compared to pretty much everything else. That's
Babylon and Top Gun,
2
and Tar,
hours,
and Avatar.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
Very long.
But why don't we talk a little bit about this film's awards potential? Because this was one of the earliest things that I remember hearing in terms of awards conversation of Brendan Fraser's performance in a Darren Aronofsky film with this physical transformation is gonna be the acting frontrunner. And that has slowed down as the actual nominations have started. He hasn't missed anything, rightfully so, but he's competing very closely currently with Austin Butler and Colin Farrell for that Oscar Best Actor race. And for me, he's far and away the performance that I want to win the most. I like not Babylon. Jesus. I like Elvis. I love Austin Butler's performance in that movie. I like Banshees. I like Colin Farrell's acting in that movie. But for me, I really want Brendan Fraser to explode and start taking everything once we actually start getting the winners for, SAG and BAFTA and all these different guilds.
So, for a while, I thought that this movie was going to get a Best Picture nomination.
So
because
did I.
Every crowd I heard about, the crowd I was in when I first saw it, was just emotionally amazed by this movie.
The standing ovation, notoriously.
But every time. But critics don't like the movie. And more and more festivals have gone by, and the reception has gotten worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I
65 on Rotten Tomatoes. Holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, that's not as bad as Babylon's now, like 57.
Let's get an update on that. Babylon.
But I think what's happening with The Whale is that, unfortunately, I think
56. It's still dropping.
Yeah. I think at this point, Hong Chow is not going to get nominated, which I don't like saying because she's amazing. I think it's going to be Fraser, makeup, and maybe adapted screenplay because that lineup is so weak at this point.
Yeah.
But I can see it missing. I totally can.
I can because every pundit discussion and general list that I've been seeing, sometimes it's on there, sometimes it's not. But for me, watching this film, the screenplay is the movie. I mean, of course, it's the acting, but it's the screenplay and the pacing of it and the dialogue they're delivering that keeps it, for me, so fascinating, engaging, and gives these characters such rich detail. It is that screenplay, and for me, I think it's actually my number one adapted screenplay of the year on a personal side because I love the dialogue, and I really think it would be a shame for this to miss. And frankly, I think that the criticisms of the film shouldn't be levied against that screenplay because as an adaptation of a play, it did wonders as a film. And so I'm sad that it's not in the conversation for that as much anymore. It probably will get it, but I'm not getting my hopes up.
No, and I don't know. I just think the movie's falling off so much.
Yeah.
It could do well at SAG, but now at this point, just considering that Elvis and Banshees are going to get us so many nominations, and this is probably 3, 4 at most, I don't see him winning anymore. And unless there's such a rebound in award season where it gets into picture everywhere and gets a SAG Ensemble nomination, maybe. But now it's just like, I really think it's going to be Butler or Farrell. And I personally would vote for Colin Farrell. He's my favorite leading male performance of the year. I mean, especially since Paul Mescal is looking less likely. Could happen. Yeah. But, I mean, I personally, out of everyone, would give it to Colin Farrell. But I would like to see Brendan win, too, just because the comeback and the standing ovation and the emotion. But in the end, it's just like, I'm worried about it. I don't think the film's going to ultimately do well.
Yeah.
It had a really good New York, LA, early showing, but this past weekend it did not do well. And I don't know where the audience is. I don't know where the critics are with this. I think in the end, it's just another case of a festival movie that people overestimated at first, and those Best Picture slots are going to go to films that came out.
And those are happening earlier lot this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is just another part of that. But for me, it stands above the rest of the ones that I have heard so much about, but then have dropped off a little bit. I really think this is deserving of all those nominations. I would love to see it sneak into that 10th Best Picture slot, even though that's not in the conversation anymore. But it's not impossible if the Academy likes this performance enough, which frankly I think is worthy. So for me, this movie gets a 9.3 out of 10. I really, really loved it. I think that a couple of those editing choices, a little bit of, it's got a wacky ending, spoilers, he ascends into the sky because he dies or whatever. That's a little bit weird for me. And Sadie Sink's performance not exactly hitting for me. Keeps it back from that 10 out of 10, but I was blown away by this film. And I'm excited for my friends to see it. Maybe they'll have to wait till streaming because it's not showing in very many places. But it's a film that I think deserves to be talked about because of how rich these characters are and what it says for all these themes.
Yeah, I think The Whale is an emotionally affecting film. I think it has a great set of characters. I think the performances as an ensemble are terrific, most notably Chow and Fraser.
Yep.
I was very connected with the story. I was engaged the entire time. I think it is more dynamic than it would be normally. Like most chamber pieces are. As I said, some visual aspects I have issues with. There are some lines of dialogue that I thought were a little wonky. And in the end, I do get the majority of the criticisms that the movie has, but I was engaged and I like the acting and the writing. So The Whale gets a 7.9 for me.
That's good. All right. Well, let us know your thoughts on The Whale and stick around for more reviews of this ilk because there's plenty of movies to talk about. The award season is in full swing right now, and we're just getting to where it's real juicy, and we're going to start getting some winners. So we'll see you guys in other discussions.